Welcome, everyone.
Perfect.
My name is Daniel Moyer. I'm one of the sales support trainers here at Briggs&Stratton Energy Solutions. Excited today to be here, hosted by A1 Solar Store. With me today is Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Daniel. How are you doing today? I want to
I'm
welcome everybody to today's webinar on going fully off grid. I'm Melissa Dinello, customer support specialist from A1 Solar Store, where I work closely with customers every single day.
Today's topic is, what if you got a customer that wants to go fully off grid, or what if you want to go fully off grid? How are we
hmm
going to size, design a system, and select the right components as well? So let's jump into it. We already kind of introduced ourselves a little bit. Again, I'm here with Briggs&Stratton Energy Solutions, joined by Melissa. I'm excited to work with A1 Solar Store. You're one of our better distributors. You guys not only provide our batteries, but you provide all the other parts and pieces that we're going to need to build our
Exactly.
off-grid solar store. So thank you for having us.
Of course, anytime. Just a little bit of background info for those new to us. A1 Solar Store is a marketplace with a wide range of solar panels, generators, batteries, and roofing, all 100% genuine and shipped directly from manufacturers. We have over 70 fulfillment centers across the US and coverage across all states in the Caribbean. We ensure fast and reliable delivery whatever it's needed. We also know that many of you are receiving more and more requests from customers who want to disconnect from the grid entirely. They want to start navigate those conversations, and we understand that they can be challenging. That's why we've invited two experts from Briggs& and Stratton, Daniel Moyer, senior trainer and expert in energy systems and power generation, and Rodolfo Garza, who I just saw that he was coming in the meeting. He's the business development management manager, with deep technical and market experience in off-grid and backup solutions. They're going to help us clarify what going fully off-grid truly requires and to walk you through the essential steps, tools, system components needed for a successful off-grid installation. So thank you both for being here today. So Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm really excited about working with Briggs& and Stratton is that legacy that that company brings. When I first, realized I was working for Briggs& and Stratton, I immediately thought about, and I'm going to date myself, Melissa, but in the 1980s, mowing the lawn in my backyard using a Briggs& and Stratton lawnmower. Of course, my dad didn't buy the self-propelled ones. Those were just something else to break. But I remember seeing that logo on top of that lawnmower and realizing when I started here at Briggs& and Stratton, the legacy of the American manufacturing that this company has brought. And so when we're thinking about positioning these batteries or a generator, we're going to talk about generators today, we're going to think about the legacy, the name brand recognition that this company brings, as well as all the technology and the advancements that come along with it. But being a company, right, that's going to offer a 15-year warranty on that battery you see there is important because, yeah, a 15-year warranty is great. A lot of our competition is 10-year, but we're going to be around in 15 years to support that warranty. So we're really excited to be here today. Rodolfo, do you have anything to add? What makes you excited about working for Briggs& and Stratton?
Yeah, hello everybody. Good morning. Well, as you said, I mean, it's a company that's been around for many, many years. In this industry, we see so many companies, a lot of competition, companies that come and go. We go to trade shows, and every year we see new companies coming up, and the next year, half of those companies are gone. So it's great to be on a company that has a lot of history, good quality, good product, and it's going to stick around for a long time.
So let's go back. Let's go back to the history of off-grid. In a lot of ways, this entire renewable energy industry, solar, batteries, all got started in the off-grid industry. People living up in cabins up in the woods of Northern California, in Maine, the deserts, right, of Arizona. I'm thinking of the off-gridders, the old school people. They were the first ones to leverage. And you look at the picture on the right there, Rodolfo and Melissa, I see a lot of people. These are collector's items now. These solar modules you see
Exactly.
there, those are either Schuko's or some Shell panels or Arco BP panels. These panels were expensive. They weren't very large, and we didn't have the industry we do today if it wasn't for the pioneers. Now, when we think about living off grid, a lot of people living off grid simply had a generator. They would run the generator during the day, have lights, do dinner, and then they'd shut the generator off at night. And that was the end of their day. They, being the off-gridders, the pioneers that came before us, wanted something more without fuel. They wanted not to listen to that noise, and they wanted lights at night. So that's where these solar panels came in. And I also got a picture of an old Trace inverter up there, up top, a brick. But look at the prices people were paying, right? They were paying, 100-watt TV modules, $477, right? $470 a watt. These charge controllers were very expensive. So it's really excited to see how far it's come. I got a lot of this stuff right out of Home Power Magazine, which was an old publication that was in the industry. All the digital archives are still there. So if you want to check them out, links are there. Melissa is going to make sure everybody gets a copy of these slide decks so you can check them out. Specifically where I live up in Northern California, here's some of the pioneers, right? This is Roger, Charlie, and Dave Katz. These guys, again, not only started the idea that people could live off-grid using solar, but also developed distribution companies that no longer around, but also created some of the products. I'm thinking of the Pelton wheel for micro hydro. I'm thinking of some of the charge controllers like Trace or Hart. I'm thinking of some of the old solar modules as well. And you look at that roof, right? Look how tiny those solar modules are. So again, thinking about where our industry came from, it really started with off-grid, even the grid-tied system. Of course, grid-tied's much larger now. Another thing interesting to think about is the idea of net metering, right? This whole industry is relatively new when it comes to the idea of net metering. And first net metering agreements didn't come out till the mid-90s. And there's a couple of old home power articles about that. Another concept, though, that's coming along is a lot of states, California, Hawaii, now Illinois, others, are eliminating their net energy metering tariffs, right? There's no longer that one-to-one credit when you produce a kilowatt hour, you send it out to the grid, you get a credit for it, you can use it in the winter, you can use it at night. They're going to net billing tariff, or they have no net metering policy at all. So a lot of the concepts that we're about to talk about going off grid now apply to these net billing tariffs, right? If I don't get anything, if I send my solar back to the grid, I'm going to do everything in my power, pun intended, to not send anything to the grid, only use my solar to store batteries, discharge batteries at night. Essentially, I'm trying to make my home as off-grid as possible. So, and additionally, I would add another one to this, that there's people that could otherwise easily have access to grid. They live in a suburb, they live in a city, but they're, for whatever reasons, are just fed up with the utility and they want to go grid defection. Now, there's a great article in Solar Builder magazine that came out about this concept where people would otherwise easily have grid can now simply off-grid their home. Maybe they still have the grid connection, maybe they don't, to use it as a backup. But this idea of off-grid is moving beyond just the people living up in the woods. It's moving to people that live in cities and states that don't have net metering, and it's applying a lot to people that could otherwise easily have grid power that don't.
And Daniel, before I let you continue, quick question: in which states or regions in the U.S. do you see the greatest potential for off-grid systems to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So a lot of it is states, like I mentioned, that don't have a net energy metering no longer, right? The California, Hawaii, Illinois is a new one. There's other states that don't have any net energy metering policies at all. They don't really let you connect to the grid. And I'd also say states that have very high electricity prices as well, because that's going to be an impetus for people to produce, and then store, and then use their own energy as well. Rodolfo, do you want to add anything to that question?
Yeah, so something I would say is people now are considering the grid as the backup. I mean, before you would rely on the grid all the time, and you were looking for a backup solution, so battery generator. Now with this concept, having a battery and generator system, people that are connected to the grid is now your backup. So you kind of disconnect from the grid, but you still have the option to use the grid as the backup. If you have, you run out of batteries, it's in the season that you don't have enough sun and you don't have a generator, you can still use the grid. So just keep the grid as your backup and only use it when needed.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. It's almost like a generator in a lot of ways. Some of the graphs on the left there, this is kind of just highlighting that when we're thinking about off-grid systems, we need to understand the seasonality of not only the production that comes from a solar panel, but also the consumption, the loads that are on. Now, in this example on the left here, this person probably doesn't have air conditioning because I see a lot of consumption in the winter. Usually, if you have an air conditioning home, like somebody down in Florida or Texas, the consumption, the household usage would probably be the inverse of what you see here, although the production would kind of stay the same. So we're going to get into some sizing here in a minute and talk through a lot of this as well. Melissa, Rodolfo, I wish this was my home. This is not far from where I
Same.
live up in Northern California. This is an off-grid home up in Humboldt, California, Humboldt County, California. And when we look at this here, think about how far away the electrical lines might need to be run to get to this home. So it can be very expensive, maybe $50,000, whereas we might spend $50,000 in an off-grid system. The cost to get utility to an off-grid home is usually variable based on the distance from the nearest existing power lines. Sometimes the utility companies need to add a new transformer to step down that voltage down to your home voltage. Sometimes you need to trench or do overhead through other people's property, which brings up the idea that you need to have easements or get a lot of permits to do that as well. But even if you were to get grid out to this home, spend $50,000 to get grid to this home versus spending $50,000 for the off-grid system, now you're still spending $100, $200 on a utility bill every month. So it's a very nice argument to say to a homeowner that lives in this cabin here, it's a little bit bigger than a cabin, I would say, let's just off-grid you. You're not going to have to pay an electric bill ever again. Yeah, you might need to replace the batteries after 10 or 15 years, 20 years. Yeah, maybe the solar panels are going to degrade after 20 years, 25 years. But we're going to off-grid you. And you're not going to have to be paying another person, a utility company, for that electricity. The
And Daniel,
advantage, yeah, go
is it
ahead.
like, I'm so sorry, is it like a simple checklist that you go, through with the customer when you're about to decide what type of system they need, what they require?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of resources, right? I would say, Melissa, A1 SolarStore is one of the go-to places for that expertise, right? You guys have packages that you've developed. You
We
have
do.
on staff people that can help you figure out the size system you need. Additionally, Briggs&Stratton is here to help. And some of the things we're about to go through, I think will help us a lot. Melissa, one of the biggest factors in what size system you're going to need are the loads that the homeowner
Okay.
wishes to have, which we'll go through as well. Rodolfo, anything to add to that?
Yeah, some pages have load calculators, so they make it easy. So you can put all the loads you're going to have on the system, and you need to consider on the loads two things: how much energy you need, that is capacity in kilowatt hours, as well as how much power, how many kilowatts, how much continuous power you're going to need on the system. So that's a combination on battery size and inverter size. So there's the two important factors to consider when you're creating an off-grid system.
So when we think about, what are the advantages, right, of going with an off-grid battery generator inverter system, right? The idea that, we're not going to have to pay that utility bill. These systems can last a long time. A lot of these solar modules are pretty amazing. The ones that you guys have at A1 SolarStore, they degrade very little after 20 or 25 years. They have amazing workman manufacturer warranties as well. But, there are some disadvantages when we're not pulling in grid. Grid is that unlimited amount of electric that we can always have. So we don't necessarily need to think about always turning the lights off in the house. We don't need to think about when it's winter time, when there's a big storm that we need to be, the generator will automatically start, but we don't have to think about the propane that we're going to have to bring in. So it does take a little bit of extra work on us as an installer to make sure when we're doing an off-grid system, we educate some of the homeowners on what it means to live off-grid. And I'm going to show here in a second with a lot of these very powerful, very reliable, less expensive systems, the off-grid is becoming more and more of a valuable proposition. Off-grid systems are almost always going to include a generator. They almost always have. And the reason we do that is, like I mentioned earlier, during winter, when it's cloudy out, when the solar is not producing, we need an ability to be able to recharge those batteries. And how we do that is a generator. Briggs&Stratton has a whole line of generators available at A1 SolarStore that can then be used to start and stop automatically based on the state of charge of the battery using a 2-wire signal to start. So we got that solar down at the bottom. It can detect our batteries getting low. It'll start that generator. That's great when it's been cloudy and we need to recharge the batteries, as well as when that generator starts to take over the loads. Generators usually by themselves don't really run at their most fuel efficient point. What I mean by that is you got a home, you got a transfer switch, kind of the typical old school way of doing a generator. When that generator starts, we might put an 18,000, a 22,000 watt generator on your house. It's not running at 18,000. It's probably running at 2 or 3,000 watts to keep the lights on, the internet on, the fridge running. The reason we oversize that generator is to start the motor loads, the air conditioners or the well pumps. But when we combine a generator and a battery system, we're going to start that generator and we're going to run it hard. Maybe not pedal to the metal, but we're going to maybe run that 18,000 watt generator at 16,000 watts, or that 26K generator at 20,000 watts. A generator pushing out 20,000 watts for 1 hour, you just generated 20 kilowatt hours. That's enough to recharge one of our entire batteries. So we're going to run it hard, run it at its most fuel efficient point, and then shut that generator off, saving the noise, the maintenance, the runtime, and more importantly, the fuel that's associated with running that generator.
And are those your valid points to talk to the customer to sell that hybrid option? The combination between the generator, are those the value points?
Really, in a lot of ways, it is possible to go without a generator, but what we end up having to do is oversize the solar a lot during to get them through the winter. So having a generator, a standby generator, absolutely is possible. Rodolfo, though, they could use a portable generator, though, couldn't they?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, I was gonna say that, I mean, having, as you said, off-grid, a combination of a generator and a battery inverter system is the ideal system. You don't want to have one without the other, because as you said, if you have only a generator and you're off-grid and want to power just a single light bulb, you're gonna have the generator running just for a single light bulb. So you don't want to over consume your fuel on the generator, and on the other side, you don't want to oversize the battery system if not needed. If you only have a couple of days of the year when you need that much power, that's when you bring up the generator and you can keep your battery size, size to the right requirements. So I think that combination make the perfect package when you're off-grid.
You're looking at our 13K generator there on the top, and then solar and our batteries, which will be coming up, all available at A1 SolarStore. Well, let's keep going. Let's talk about the types of off-grid solar systems that are kind of on the market. And I put together kind of the going from the smallest to the biggest. And you look at maybe everybody their first off-grid system was a calculator in a lot of ways, right? It had a solar panel. I don't think calculators usually have a battery, but it has a load, right? The ability to calculate numbers. But look at what we got on the screen. We got a little solar radio. We got a little solar lantern. These systems essentially are an off-grid solar system. They have a solar panel, they have a battery, and they have a load, whether it's radio or be able to charge your phone. It's all integrated into one. And what I've noticed in the industry is that there's a lot of these portable power packs coming to the market. And I think they're great. They're great for camping. They're great for kind of the picnics or what you might have. But these portable systems aren't not necessarily the right solution for an off-grid system or a standby system or a system permanently installed on a home. There's a lot of UL listings that stationary batteries have to go through, notably UL 9540. These portable systems aren't being put through the same UL listings that we have to. And it's against code it's fine to take that little EcoFlow, take it out to the campground, put it next to the fire, put it in the back of your truck, rumble down the road, and then take that inside and put it in your living room, put it in the kid's bedroom. They're still lithium-ion batteries. Sometimes they're cobalt-based chemistries as well, where we leverage the lithium iron phosphate in the stationary industry. It's a mess. And there was a great article by Jeff Spees, the Mobile Energy Storage System. Jeff kind of did a play of words on that, a mess. And there's a lot of recalls on these. And these portable systems, by code, aren't allowed to be interconnected into the home's wiring premise. And if they are, they need to go through those UL listings, which a lot of them are not. And these portable systems are becoming larger and larger every year. I do think that there's a great opportunity for them. But when we're talking about a system that's going to be cycled daily, permanently installed, I want something safe. I want something that's going to be reliable for years on end. And the products here, Briggs&Stratton offers, the inverters that A1 SolarStore offers, I believe is the right solution.
Before we move forward, I want to mention that we frequently get calls from customers asking especially about solar solutions for their RVs. It's a growing segment, and many people are curious about whether off-grid principles apply to mobile setups as well. So if you can touch that on your discussion, it would be incredibly helpful for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Rodolfo, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and RV, as you said, Melissa, right. I mean, that is an off-grid system, pretty much, a mobile home where you have most of the loads you see on a home. One of the main differences are the loads. On an RV, you're going to see smaller loads, more efficient systems, and a lot of systems based on DC power. So maybe you have a small refrigerator that's powered by 24, even 12 volts. There's a few on 48. I think on the RV industry, 24 volts is kind of the standard. So the only difference, or the main difference, is going to be the voltage required on RV systems. So it's very similar in a way. A lot of the RVs, they do have the solar panels on the roof. Some of them, they even do incorporate some portable generators. You have the ability to, go to get shore power and recharge your battery when you're stationary. But yeah, the main difference is going to be the loads. It's smaller loads, DC power, but very, very similar. So yeah, RV system are very much considered like an off-grid home system.
Thank you for that answer, Rodolfo. We do have the first question from the audience. Luis is asking if the PG&E customers are allowed to go off-grid.
Yeah, that is a difficult and great question to answer. I would check with your local AHJ, your local building official in your jurisdiction. So what do you mean by a PG&E customer? So I imagine that home up in that woods, right? They're off-grid, right? And so they're in PG&E territory in the sense that PG&E covers that whole part of the state, but they're off grid, right? They're allowed to go off grid. Maybe you're asking if somebody's in town, right, in a suburb, and maybe they already have PG&E coming to the house. Can you call up PG&E and ask them to disconnect the wires coming to my house? That might be a little more difficult kind of proposition. If you're doing a new build or you're building not a shack, but an ADU in the backyard to go off grid, absolutely. But again, I would check with the local AHJs, the local inspectors as well, to see that. And the idea that you can call PG&E and tell them to cut the cord may be a little more difficult. And I would argue you could tell the homeowner, you know what, we're still going to keep that PG&E connection. Like Rodolfo said, we want that as kind of our backup. But guess what? I'm going to program and size your system so that we're going to do everything we can to not either send power back or consume power. So how does that work for you, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, that I can't necessarily cut the cord, but I can leave it there and we're not going to send anything back. And I don't know, Rodolfo, maybe they could just shut the main breaker off and leave it the way it is. Turn it on when they need power. Rodolfo, anything to add to that? Or Melissa?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that Luis was saying he has several customers asking about adding batteries to their Enphase solar. So he was asking what their options were.
Not our batteries, unfortunately. And that's a great point, right? So there's a lot of competition out there. Their inverters, let's use Enphase, right? So Enphase has micro inverters and they AC coupled to their battery through their combiners. You have to use their batteries with their products. We at Briggs&Stratton, we make a battery and we give you, the installer, the flexibility to choose the other parts and pieces, the BOS, balance of systems. We let you choose the inverter. I really like Solarc. Solarc's available through A1 SolarStore, but there's other inverter opportunities out there. We let you choose what other parts and pieces you want to use. Whereas Enphase and some of the others, no, you would have to use one of their batteries, unless you absolutely could take an Enphase system with some IQ7 pluses and feed that string, that AC output, and AC couple into a Solarc. So absolutely, you can have an Enphase system that feeds AC coupled into a Solarc, into some of these other hybrid inverters. But if you want to stick with the Enphase battery or add Enphase batteries, you would have to stick with Enphase. Rodolfo, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, most people, they kind of like to stick with the brand, and if they have an Enphase system, they go with an Enphase battery. But as you said, I mean, they do have the option to go with an AC coupled system. So if they have Enphase, microinverters producing AC power, you can go and put one of those hybrid inverters, as you mentioned, like a solar and solar EG4, etc. They have a way to integrate AC input into your battery system. So yeah, there's the option to go with an AC couple solution, but you need to add a separate inverter. So you need the hybrid battery inverter added to an existing microinverter. So that's why sometimes people, they don't want to go that route, but yeah, the option is there.
And then you could also add DC coupled solar as well.
Yeah, if you want to add additional solar, yeah, you're right. I mean, adding like a solar, you can have your existing AC coupled solution and add more solar on the DC. Then you have a combination. So if you're planning to grow your system, yeah, that would be an option, because you can have both AC couple and DC couple solar.
Thank you both so much, Daniel. Again, you can continue. Sorry for the interruption,
no,
but I just
thank
saw
you,
the
Luis,
questions there.
for your questions, and please keep them coming. I was going to make a bad joke about the band AC/DC, but I'm not. So let's keep going on types of off-grid systems, right? Another kind of very popular system back in the day was direct, right? You get a solar panel, you run it through a linear current booster, you run a pump, and you're going to pump water uphill into a tank, and then you're going to use gravity to run water down the hill. And so you could think of that tank of water as your battery, and you can think of the elevation that tank is above the faucet or that shower head as the voltage or the pressure that you're going to get when you come have that water flow out of it. I also see it in fans as well. Let's step it up a little bit. Let's go DC. And Rodolfo, you had mentioned RVs, right? So a lot of RVs have DC loads, and this is kind of what we did back in the day, where we had solar modules. We probably didn't really need a disconnect, although sometimes we put a disconnect in. We put it into a charge controller. Some of those old ones were even PWM charge controllers. This happens to be an Outback MPPT charge controller, again available through A1 SolarStore. We're taking that charge controller, which prevents the solar panels from overcharging the batteries. We're feeding it into our batteries. We have a DC combiner, and then we're feeding DC loads. And we also can feed a DC refrigerator, for example, as well. And this is how we used to do it. It's not so much common anymore. A lot of times now we just run AC through the whole home. The advent of more powerful hybrid inverters, pure sine wave inverters. Think about, modified sine wave inverters. That's what we were doing back in the day. It's really gone away from this. But I do see an opportunity to come back to this. And there was a great article by NREL that talked about the DC architecture in a modern home. And I won't go too deep into it, but just think that, your USB-C plugs, right? The idea that you plug your phone in, some of those USB-C plugs are rated for 100 watts. 100 watts is enough to run a light or a TV or many of these other devices in the home. And not only do you get power out of this thing, but you also get, data coming through these things. So there's obviously your larger appliances, the electric dryer, the electric stove, the toaster oven, right, aren't going to be using this. But the idea that the home of the future might not have a wall outlet. It might just have USB-C plugs or USB plugs. Also power over Ethernet's a big one as well. Keep it going. So we had that DC only system. Here's kind of a hybrid, right? We still have DC light bulbs, maybe a DC refrigerator, but we added an inverter. so we can still have that microwave running or some of those other AC appliances running as well. But I think really, in a lot of ways, this is going to be the future of what off-grid is, if not already, is the entire architecture of the house is AC. And we're using solar panels. We're wiring them in series to build up to the voltage we need for that MPPT to work in that solar. We're charging up our battery. That's a our simplified 6.6 stacking battery there on the bottom. We're going to feed our AC loads, and we got a generator there that can be controlled by 2-wire signal to start up, and stop based on the state of charge of the battery.
Yeah, we see those hybrid inverters to become bigger and bigger every time. We see new inverter companies, keep developing this hybrid system with a 48-volt base battery. And they keep coming with new models where mainly they just keep making them bigger and bigger. So you can have a single inverter to take over the whole house. So yeah, that's something, as you say. I mean, this is becoming the standard for a lot of the hybrid system. Just have this kind of solution. Have your hybrid inverter big enough to power the house, and then your battery backup.
Let's start to get into a sizing of a system. As I mentioned earlier, the loads are going to dictate the size of the off-grid system we need to install. And one of the biggest drivers of the loads of any home, whether it's on-grid or off-grid, is the heating and cooling of the home itself, as well as the heating of the water. Those are the biggest drivers. So if we think about an off-grid house, how are we going to heat that house? A lot of people, especially up in that picture, right? You're going to use firewood. You're going to use firewood to heat your house. And you look at that picture on the top right there, they got a nice a wood stove. Not only they're using the wood stove to heat the home, but they're cooking with it right there. And then they got one of those fans right there. I think that's a Stirling engine where the fan can operate and circulate the hot air there. Also think about a washer, and I got the Biko washer down there in the bottom right corner where you might need to pedal to wash your clothes. The LED lights. So these loads, again, are what's going to dictate the size of an off-grid system. Also understand, I mentioned it earlier, the seasonal variations, and not only the usage of the loads, but also the solar insolation, or the amount of sun that your any given location is going to get. So it really takes you as the installer to educate the homeowners to understand those seasonal differences. Understand that this isn't unlimited grid power anymore. You need to turn off your lights. Think about adjusting that thermostat so we're not draining our batteries. And then go back, right? Recheck with that homeowner and come back and educate them. It's an opportunity to maybe enlarge the system or also ask for referrals as well. But I'll say this, again, with the advent of these very long-lasting lithium-ion batteries, like the ones that we offer, powerful, clean sine wave inverters, like the ones from Solar that A1 SolarStore offers, and the cheap, and still great solar modules, living off-grid doesn't have to feel like living off-grid anymore. Unless, of course, you're using a composting toilet. If anybody on the call has used one, let us know. But I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
You're fine. I was just going to say that taking into account what you were just mentioning about the seasonal aspect of it all, how do you plan the system correctly for clients that, have large seasonal load fluctuations, like, for example, a vacation home?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, off-grid, right? We think of somebody living up on the hill the entire year, but a lot of off-grid systems are these seasonal cabins, right? The hunting lodges or the places where they're only going to go for a couple of years. I mean, a couple of months out of the year. So what we need to think about when we're doing that is understanding what the season that they plan to use it, and that's going to help us dictate the size solar module. And we're going to go through a sizing exercise here in a second. Understand that we're going to size the system for the solar insolation they get for the months that they expect to use it, right? A winter cabin is going to be, they're not going to get a lot of sun. So we're going to have to think about using a generator to charge up those systems. They're probably going to have wood heat. Great, that's not a big load. We're thinking about maybe a summer desert cabin or something like that, where they're coming down, they're a snowbird, they're coming down. That's going to be a lot different load profile. So there's a lot of variations that come to that, and understanding also, what do they do when they leave for the season? How do we properly turn off the inverter? Maybe we leave the solar and the charge controller on, to keep the battery charged. I will say this, that these lithium ion battery chemistries, not just ours, but a lot of the inherent in this chemistry, they have a very low rate of self-discharge. Usually it's like 1% per month. It's not like our old lead acid batteries. So you could theoretically just shut the entire system down and go that way. Otherwise, you might want to leave the solar and the charge controller on. Rodolfo, have
Yeah,
you
I was
ever
gonna
used the
say,
composting toilet?
oh, actually I have. Yeah, I was gonna say, Daniel, one of the advantages of our system is that these are maintenance free. So as you said, you can just leave them on, plug in all year long. There is no need for maintenance. It's not as the old system, lead acid, you need to take care of the batteries, check the level of the fluids, do some cleaning. With this battery system, once it's set up, you don't need to really do much of it. I mean, it's maintenance free and you can keep it running all year long if you want. One thing to consider on those like hunting cabins is the location. If they're in location where it's gonna get like freezing cold, you just make sure the batteries don't get exposed to those temperatures. Otherwise, yeah, you can just leave them running if you want.
Yeah, that's a great point. So lithium-ion batteries usually have they're a little more sensitive to cold temperature during the charge cycle, but they can get relatively really cold in the standby. So yeah, great point, Rodolfo, on cold temperature. Now, our 6.6 lithium ion LFP chemistry or stacking battery can go down to 14 degrees during the charge cycle and even colder when it's just sitting stationary. But if we are going to be charging it, right, we're not going to have a heat on in a hunting cabin. That's a great point. And I'm joking about the composting toilet. Most off-grid homes, maybe I am a little, maybe I'm not. They're going to have a septic system, usually in a leach field as well. As I said earlier, the ability to heat not only your hot water, but also the home really dictates the size of the system. And why shouldn't an off-grid home also have air conditioning? And one of the great reasons I like you guys, Melissa, at A1 SolarStore is not only do you sell the batteries, the inverters, the solar modules, but you also sell heat pumps. Now you have a line of heat pumps from Mr. Cool, and I got them kind of down on the bottom right-hand corner there. These heat pumps, right, can take electricity using compressors, move heat from one place to the other, and then generate cold air or warm air inside a home. They have reversing valves inside them to make them either be a heater or an air conditioner. You got a great line. A lot of these Mr. Cool heat pumps have inverter-driven compressors, so they have a very low surge rating to them. They also are variable, so they're not always just blasting away. They can modulate the amount of energy they're using. They don't have to be those little mini splits that you see on people's walls everywhere. You guys offer them, and also ducted systems where you can run them through existing ducts, floor ducts or ceiling ducts. So as a homeowner, they're not going to know any difference as well. When we think about these though, although they're very efficient, they modulate, they're still going to use more electricity, energy than say having a wood stove, right? A wood stove is just wood you chop down. I don't really see solar thermal anymore. It still might be an opportunity for off-grid. What I would almost recommend is just get solar modules, get a battery, and get a heat pump water heater, where for every 1 unit of electricity we put into it, we can get 3 or 4 units of heat out of it, just like we can with the heat pumps as well. How do we size an off-grid system? And I'd also say this is how we might size somebody who's under like I said earlier, a net billing tariff, where they don't have that ability to export to the grid anymore. First, we need to figure out how much energy they use in kilowatt hours or watt hours, as well as how many watts that the inverter needs to be sized for, not only continuous, but surge. We're going to figure out how many batteries we need. We're going to figure out how many solar modules we need. We're going to pick out a charge controller, pick out a good inverter, and then talk a little bit about some of the wiring, some of the battery management system. Again, a 15-year warranty on our 6.6 stacking battery. Rodolfo, you want to just talk a little bit about the 6.6 there and some of its advantages and kind of expand on that 15-year warranty, please?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a battery we launched about a year and a half ago, and it has become our flagship battery. It's a great product. It has really good characteristics, specs. It's very easy to install. It's each battery module is going to give you 6.6 kilowatt hour in capacity. And you can have a single stack with 3 batteries for 20 kilowatt hours on one stack. And one stack is going to give you in continuous power 14 kilowatts. So you can pull 14 kilowatts. If you see next to it, solar 15K, that inverter is going to pull 12 kilowatts. So one stack is going to be able to support a solar 15K on full power. And you can grow your system, on a 6.6 kilowatt increments. And you can start small. You have a small off cabin. You can go with just one battery module, just 6.6 if that's what you need. And you can add more batteries later on. One stack is 20 kilowatt hours, but you can have up to 6 of those. 12 batteries for 18 batteries for 120 kilowatt hours on a whole system. We don't see a lot of system going that big. What we're seeing, most of the system is one stack or two stacks. So a lot of people go with 20, 40 kilowatt hours. That seems to be the standard size. And this battery system is good for indoor, it's good for outdoor. It can be mounted on the floor, it could be mounted on the wall. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to design the system.
Thank you, Rodolfo. I believe that's a Solar 12K on the right there, which uses 9,000 watts, but the 15K makes it great because it has that dual battery input. So we don't need an external combiner if we do have those two stacks as well.
Daniel.
Yes,
And
Melissa.
Rodolfo, before we continue, I wanted to ask how to balance between oversizing and undersizing. Do we have to compromise anything on the system?
I can think of two kind of points that you bring up there. One, do we have to oversize or undersize the solar, the amount of solar panels we have? Usually we try to find a balance between the winter and the summer. Now, a lot of times
Okay.
if I size a system for winter, it's going to be way oversized for winter. And that, results in them spending more money than they might need. So
Okay.
we understand, and Rodolfo, you mentioned it, right, that we always want to have a generator in here so we can find that balance. Another thing you might
Fair.
think about is oversizing or undersizing the inverter or the ability to run loads. So they might be fine right now. So I got some loads on the screen. What if they add something? They have to call you to rip out your old inverter and install a new inverter. So we might want to oversize it a little bit for the power output of the inverter to anticipate some of those newer loads. Again, I think that goes back to the education of the homeowner, letting them educate them, tell them about what a surge watt draw is or continuous watt draw is. Tell them the inverter that you plan to install is capable of X, but if you go to Y, you may overload the inverter, or educate them that, look, you can turn some things on, but you can't turn everything on at
Okay.
one time. So absolutely. Rodolfo, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the advantage of our system is you can always scale up the system at a later time. So once you design the system, you install it, it's not a fixed system. You can always go
Okay.
back, add an extra battery. You can add an extra inverter if needed. So you have that
Fair.
flexibility to add on if needed. But yeah, I mean, just you want to start with what you have now. And as Daniel said, just oversize a
And
little
build up
bit.
if needed.
Yeah, and you also a little bit because if you don't want to start increasing every time, you add a new load, you need an inverter. So just do a little bit so you have some space and cushion for some loads, but if needed, you can always grow.
Great point. Yeah, so you don't have to think about it too much because, like Rodolfo said, you can change. We got some loads,
Yeah.
right? So this is my off-grid cabin. I got to have a TV, right? I got to have some lights, got to have water, be able to cook, keep my food cool, and of course they're going to need some Wi-Fi, or maybe I should change that out, guys, and change it to a Starlink right there. But what we want to do is look out what is our continuous watt draw, and then also think about what some of these loads might surge, right? They have a motor in them, and there's inductive loads that cause these to surge. So I add up, how many watts all of these use if I turn them all at once, and then how many would they, if I add or turn them all on and some were starting, that's my surge. And then I figure out how many hours per day each one of these loads might run. I'm only watching 4 hours of TV a day, I guess, but that tells me how much energy in kilowatt hours I use per day. And as Rodolfo said, there's online versions of this that you can plug in so you don't have to use the spreadsheets that will tell you these numbers, right? This is what we're going to use. We know, I just said, we're going to use 4.6 kilowatt hours a day. Inverters aren't 100% efficient. Usually they're a little bit better than 90% efficient, especially when you're not really drawing a lot, but we're going to use 90%. So we're going to lose 90% 10% of our energy turning DC to AC. That means my battery needs to be a little bit bigger to account for that loss, 5.1 kilowatt hours. Then we also have to think about the number of days of autonomy. What I mean by that is when we live off grid, we want to be able to kind of go a few days, usually 3, I've even heard 5 days of just coasting on the batteries before the sun comes out and starts to recharge the batteries. Or we don't want that generator starting and stopping every 12 hours or maybe even one day, right? We want to go a few days and then we can coast through. So that we call that days of autonomy. So I'm going to take my 5.1, bump it up to 15.3. These lithium ion batteries can be discharged down to 100% depth of discharge. In fact, our warranty says you can do that. Our warranty also says you can have unlimited cycles, no throughput clause. You get 15 years, but I still like to keep a little bit of juice in the batteries, about 20% in the battery. So I'm going to do an 80% depth of discharge. That means I need to have about 19 kilowatt hours for my little off-grid home I was talking about. Just so happens, Rodolfo said it, that 19 kilowatt hours is really close to the 19.8 kilowatt hours in our stack of 6.6 stacking batteries. So I'm going to have one full stack, 3 battery modules, to give me a 20 kilowatt hour battery bank. Now we got to think about solar. So we're looking at here is a map of the United States that shows the amount of solar sun hours you get during averaged for the entire year. This map is great when we're designing grid-tied systems that have net metering, where I know if I put 1,000 watts of solar out in the sun, how many sun hours am I going to get? Now, this is great for grid-tied systems, but when we think about off-grid systems, what we need to look at is a map like the one behind me. I need to look at how many sun hours we get during the worst month of the year. And I'm going to go ahead and choose Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's the headquarters of Briggs. And it says during the worst month of the year, which is probably a December or a January, we get 2 hours of full sun hours. That doesn't mean that the sun isn't up in the sky for just 2 hours, but when the sun is really low in the horizon, I'm not getting a full sun hour. And as the sun kind of arcs up and comes a little bit higher in the sky and then drops down, if I were to add all of the fractions of those sun hours, I would get 2, which isn't a lot. That's why Rodolfo and I don't live in Milwaukee, although we're going to be up there visiting and we go up a lot. That's not a lot, right? So I kind of chose that purposefully to highlight the headquarters of Milwaukee, but also talk about what it's going to look like if this is in the worst case scenario. Being hard on Milwaukee here, but if I look at where I live, I only get 2.5. So I'm not much better off right here. And Rodolfo, I know you live a little further south. I think you're at 5 or something like that. So the size system that Rodolfo would have versus what I would have or Milwaukee would have is very different. So that's why it's important to look at the worst month of the year. So we know how much sun hours we get. That's great. Now we need to think about if there's any shading obstructions on where we're going to put the solar panels on an off-grid system. A lot of off-grid systems use ground mounts because they usually have a ton of property. So shading doesn't usually come into play, but if you are going to put it on a roof or maybe you're going to do it on a ground mount, understand what shading is going to impact your system. This is an old tool. I still love it, the Solar Pathfinder. But what you do is you put this device where you want to put the modules, and then it will show you visually where you might see obstructions to some of those sun hours that you might get. That's kind of gone away. And in a lot of ways, it's gone away because the advent of open solar, Aurora Solar, can now do shade analysis using satellite-based imagery. So here's a house, right? And I can see we got a bunch of trees here. And this can tell me, without getting out onto the roof, without getting that Solar Pathfinder, how shade will impact our array during certain months of the year. You can see here in November, I'm losing a lot of good solar production. By the afternoon, the sun comes out here, but this can allow us to do some quick calculations without even going outside. So it's a long drive down some of these dirt roads to some of these off-grid homes to help us figure out how shading is going to impact our system. Remember, we used 4.6 kilowatt hours a day. We need to generate 4.6 kilowatt hours a day. We know batteries aren't 100% efficient. They lose about 4%. We also know that systems aren't entirely efficient. In fact, based on the shading, the tilt, some of the other factors that we lost, we're going to lose about 40%. And we know we have about 2 sun hours. So I'm going to probably spec out a 4,000 watt system. I'm going to take 4,000 watts. I put 4,000 watts of solar out in the sun for 2 hours. I don't get 8 kilowatt hours out of it. I probably get closer to 4.6 kilowatt hours of generated power. So that's our system. We got 4,000 watts of solar. We got to make sure we choose a charge controller capable of processing that. That Outback right there, that can handle, that could easily handle that 4,000 right here. This is the, I believe, 24, 36, or 48. So we can handle 7,000 here. Our Solar 12K can even handle 13,000 watts, so we're good there. We need to make sure we have an inverter capable of handling that continuous watts, our surge watts. The Solar 12K can easily handle that, right? We got 1,700 of continuous watts. This Solar 12K can do 9,000. We got 2,300 watts of surge. This Solar can easily handle that. I can go to 16,000, even 25,000 for that 100 milliseconds. Another thing to keep about if we are doing DC architecture, just keep in mind that when we do AC, we usually don't think about voltage drop. We're just thinking about the ampacity of the conductors, the wires in our house. In a previous career, I worked for Sunfrost, which was a DC refrigeration company, and that's a picture of one up in the top right corner. We had a DC refrigerator that runs on 24 volts. It uses 10 amps, and it's 35 feet away. Right? If I have an appliance that uses 10 amps and I'm on AC, that's easy. I can just go ahead and use a 14 gauge wire. But if I only have 24 volts of pressure pushing that through the pipes, the wires, I'm going to hit a voltage drop considerations before I hit ampacity considerations. So really, in a lot of ways, I need to upgrade that wire gauge to an 8 gauge to allow me no more than 3% voltage drop to run some of these DC loads. So maybe that's another reason we moved away from a lot of DC architectures, is that it's really expensive wire. There's our system, everyone. We're going to do a Solar. We're going to do a stack of 6.6 Simplify batteries, a full stack, what I call 3 modules, 20 kilowatt hours. Melissa, I noticed on your website, you guys sell Silfab. I like Silfab. We use Silfab a lot.
Me too.
We're going to do 380 watt panels. We're going to do 11 of them in series. That brings us up to 4.1. Actually, we're going to do, we're going to do 11 of them in series. And if I did my math right, I need to change it a little bit down at the bottom. If we do 11 in series, we build up enough voltage so that we get the MPPTs to come alive in that solar. We got our generator and we got our loads. So Melissa, I saw Silfabs, but you guys offer other solar modules. Is there any other ones that you like?
A variety of range, actually. Wattage brands, we have Hyundai. We have been working closely with Regitech, which is an amazing brand that's been working great this past few weeks. It's growing, on customers for wholesale more than anything. So that's a good brand for you to guys check out at our website, a1solarstore.com. So thank you for mentioning, Daniel.
Yeah, of course. Rodolfo, this would probably be your off-grid though house, right? Rodolfo, we got 40 kilowatt hours. We've upgraded to the 15K. 22K generator, and we got some DC optimizers, some Tigos as well. Anything to add, Rodolfo, to our off-grid system you see here on the screen?
Yeah, this is a pretty complete system and probably one of the most common that we see. As you said, a 15K solar has the advantage it can give you 200 amp pass-through, so you can feed from the grid to a 200 amp main panel, service panel, with the SolarStore inverter. And the SolarStore is going to be your transfer switch. So you don't need an extra transfer switch. You can have a single SolarStore take over the main panel. You have, 40 kilowatt hours of battery. That's probably going to cover, 90% of the homes, if not more. And you have the added generator for extra support. So this is a very complete system. And as we said, you can go from there, and you can even start with one stack of batteries, just 20 kilowatt hours, and you can add more later on, and it gives a lot of flexibility. You can change the system and have it for off-grid, or you can have it. A lot of people, they start these systems just for backup. They're living in an area where they have a lot of power outages. So they added systems to have it initially for backup power, and then they realize they can become self-sufficient and just take advantage of the system already in place and just take your almost become off-grid customer without needing to. I mean, you start with a backup idea and then you become off-grid.
That's absolutely right, Rodolfo, that there's a lot of people out there that can't otherwise maybe leverage solar. They don't want solar. HOA doesn't allow solar. These battery backup systems are becoming more and more popular. Don't overlook those, that we can still provide backup to a homeowner, and maybe they can't have a generator. The HOA doesn't require. A lot of new homes in the cities don't have natural gas or propane available. We can still provide a homeowner that resiliency, that peace of mind that comes along with the battery backup system without solar. And it used to be the biggest thing I would never do, but it's becoming more and more common. Of course, absolutely, I do like the idea of solar where we can recharge the batteries every day. Quickly, I do want to mention, I'm showing rapid shutdown systems here. When we do off-grid systems, we still want to install code compliant systems that follow the latest building and fire codes and national electrical codes that are being enforced in your jurisdictions. I would even argue that I would say you are required to still get these off-grid systems permitted. And there's a lot of reasons to do that, for insurance purposes, for liability purposes. I'm showing Tigo rapid shutdown devices. If this was a ground mount, you wouldn't need rapid shutdown. But if you're doing this on a house, I would still follow all of the building, fire, and electrical codes that are required, just as though you were going to have it installed on a home as well. Lead acid battery replacements are a big thing. You can see here, there's a picture of an Outback system, bunch of lead acid batteries there. We've gone in and replaced them. All of those lead acid batteries were replaced by just 5 of our 3.8 kilowatt hour batteries. The picture on the right and the batteries on the left, they're the same amount of usable energy, and it has the same amount of C rate, or the ability for those batteries to be charged and discharged at the same amount of time. We're wrapping up. Everyone, thanks for sticking with us. Keep the questions coming. Let us know if you've done any sort of lead acid battery replacements. Melissa, when we were preparing for this meeting, you had asked us, I believe, to talk about, where are the opportunities for this? Right? When do we see this? Rodolfo, and I guess I'm going to ask the question for you, Melissa. Melissa, do you guys see a lot of people doing lead acid battery replacements? And I'll also ask the same question for Rodolfo. Rodolfo.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, not as much as we used to. I mean, I've been with the company 5 years. I would say 5 years, we're getting a lot of people moving away from lead acid. They have all lead acid systems, and they're looking, what's the new technology transitioning into lithium ion. We still get some those phone calls, not as many. I think a lot of people by now are moving away from lead acid, but yeah, there's still a lot of customers with all systems using lead acid, and our batteries, as the one you showed in the picture, Daniel, the 3.8, has been a great lead acid battery replacement for different reasons. I mean, it's similar size. It's a simple battery with no smart communication. You only have, your voltage control, same as lead acid. And a lot of those systems, as long as you can program and have the settings on a lithium ion, you can keep the same charge controller, you can keep the same inverters, as I said. As long as, and they have the option to program to the right values, you can keep the existing system and just switch to the battery.
Thank you. Melissa, anything to add?
Yeah, basically, I was going to say most of the same thing. We have received a few calls, but not as many. I know that you asked for questions and they are coming in. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read a question from George. He's asking, my client wants to go off grid. They have a big family and use a lot of energy, but unfortunately, there isn't enough space on their property to install a large solar array, and they want to stay green. What would you suggest? Is there any way to work around this?
Micro hydro was a big one. Wind used to be a big one. The problem with micro hydro and wind is that there's a lot of moving parts. When the batteries are full, you need to have load diversions. That can be a tough one. There, I would say, modules like the ones you guys sell, Melissa, are becoming more and more efficient. You might want to do a ground mount or a pole mount solar array far away on the property. then use higher voltage, maybe turn it all to AC far away and then pipe it into the home. Rodolfo, you got any ideas for that home?
If you don't have a lot of options to, have solar, then I mean, you need to look on the loads, how to be more efficient on the
Yeah.
loads, change your refrigerators and washer, dryer to be more electricity efficient. And I've seen some people that, they switch appliances or other devices to be powered by gas. So no, you don't go to like a full electric home if you don't have a way to generate that electricity. You can switch some of those appliances like to gas power.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Daniel, you want to
Let's
continue?
get to a Q&A slide. This is just kind of the math. I'm not going to run through this. This is the math that showed how we can replace a lot of lead acid batteries with just a few lithium ion batteries. And I want people to buy our batteries, but I would argue that this concept applies to even our competitors, that going into this off-grid systems, the revolutionary part of making people be able to live off-grid is this lithium iron phosphate chemistry. Now, of course, there are other chemistries on the horizon. We'll be there when it gets there. That's what make living off-grid not feel like living off-grid, is essentially the energy storage part of it, these lithium ion batteries as well. As Rodolfo mentioned, they're very quick to install. They have a stacking architecture that allows them to go together, indoor, outdoor mounted, and as well as the ability to stack together without having to run extra power or communication conductors. We have a rapid stack connector that stacks them together. Cycles is important. Again, they used to be, back in our lead acid battery days, our old school off-grid days, was depth of discharge. Never drop the batteries below 50%. With these lithium ion battery chemistries, you can go deeper. Again, I said you could go down to, I suggest 80%, but you can even go down to 100% depth of discharge and still get 6,000 cycles out of it. It's the rate, the C rate at which you charge or discharge these batteries, that dictates the life of the battery. And 0.5 C, that's a C over 2 charge or discharge rate. That's still discharging your whole battery in 2 hours, or charging it in 2 hours. Usually, we're not doing it that quickly. We're going to do it over the course of the day. We're going to charge batteries, and over the course of a night, we're going to discharge the batteries as well.
Daniel, I was going to add,
Yeah.
I think the depth of discharge, you can consider that depending on your user case. So if people are going to use the battery just for backup, where the batteries are only going to deplete, once a month or so, yeah, take it down to 100%. That's not a problem. Yeah. But on an off-grid, if you're cycling the battery every day, and you're planning to bring from 0 to 100 every day, yeah, you can do that, as you said, Daniel. But if you leave that extra 20%, that's going to extend the battery life and prolong how much life and power you're going to get out of the battery in the long run. So that additional capacity you leave on the battery is gonna, you're gonna still use that energy on the future. That's not something you're going to lose, because that's going to give you more life of the battery. And that battery is going to last you way more. And that's what, like on the EV cars, so that's what they do. They never go 0 to 100.
And also, if we're thinking about a grid-tied home that's doing time of use arbitrage, which these systems absolutely can do, right? We want to leave a little bit in that battery so that if the power does go out in the middle of the night, we have a little juice to run it as well. That's a great point, Rodolfo. All of the generators you see and transfer switches you see available at A1, the commercial generator that you see on the far right, those are usually 480, 208. I'm sure, Melissa, if somebody really wants one, you could get it for them. All the ones on the left are residential, propane, natural gas powered. We have some innovative technology that allows it to not derate on natural gas as well. That 22K is the one we used on our system. So let's dive into the questions before we final thoughts.
I actually do have one. For example, we have the system in place. What do you suggest for contractors as monitoring, the customer system, what they need to pay attention to after the system's complete? What do you recommend to the contractors?
Oh, I think the monitoring portals are a very popular way to do this. You can let the homeowner know, hey, I have Fleet View of your system. I will keep an eye on it. If there's any alerts or warnings, I will know about it. And I can
Mhm.
proactively keep an eye on your system as well. Rodolfo, anything to add to that?
Yeah, that's the advantage of the system these days, that all of them, they have monitoring capabilities. So that is going to give access to the homeowner, but as well as the installer to always, keep an eye on the system. And those systems are going to send you flags and message if there's something happening that, is out of normal. So I think for the installer, it's always good, keep an eye on the system, make sure everything is up and running, at least initially. And as I said before, I mean, these systems are maintenance free. So, I mean, once you see the system is just running without any issues, yeah, there's really not much need to go back. But yeah, just keep an eye, just check with the homeowner customer. As we said before, I mean, sometimes their usage changes. They want to add more loads. So it might be time to, make an upgrade on the system.
And guys, is there any training available for new contractors in the off-grid?
Yeah, we definitely have some training. Our Power Academy is our online learning platform. There's self-paced courses where you can kind of just do it at your own leisure. We have in-person training courses as well. You can uh, learn about the batteries, or you can go and get your hands dirty on a generator doing valve adjustments and oil changes and spark plug changes, as well as some also live sessions as well, where we can interact live with you as well. Please sign up for Power Academy, and there's a QR code there as well. Any more questions,
And
Melissa?
yeah, I do have one. Do you have any interesting case that you want to share with us on an off-grid installation that you guys were working on?
Yeah, I've been working with, this year a lot of different systems that go off grid. The ones I like and, feel very proud about is when we do system for nonprofit organizations, when they bring power to, like communities that they don't have access to electricity. Right now, we're working on a system for well, several systems to bring power and electricity to communities in Fiji for schools and
Well,
hospitals where they don't have, the luxury to have, an electricity available. So this nonprofit, they are using our battery systems and they're bringing power and energy to those schools. I think those off-grid systems, that's the one I enjoy working the most.
perfect. That's good to hear. And we have one another question. I did wanted to mention that I think we didn't cover the warranty process for off-grid systems. Is it a fast process for replacement, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I don't know if I was clear, but our warranty and Solark warranties do apply to off-grid systems. The warranty process is handled through our website, our tech support. First you're going to call tech support and they're going to walk you
Hmm.
through it, how to fix it and get it done. I will say also that in regards to our generators, all of our generators, with the exception of the 13K generator,
Hmm.
are warranted for what we call non-emergency use. So you can take one of our generators and use it in an off-grid system as long as it's paired up with another energy storage system like a Solark, like with our batteries. And it does revert from a 7-year warranty down to a 7-year, or whichever comes first, 1,000-hour run warranty. As far as our batteries, we do honor off-grid warranties, and it's all handled through our website. You're going to get a hold of tech support. They're going to walk you through that, and then they'll be able to issue you a warranty if that time does come. Lastly, I want to make sure, bringing back Milwaukee into the fold, NAPSEP. NAPSEP is one of my favorite conferences of the year. We're going to be hosting an event pre-conference at our headquarters in Briggs&Stratton. There's an amazing museum that goes all the way back to our founding in the early 1900s. We're going to be hosting some training sessions there, and then go to NAPSEP afterwards for the remainder of the week as well. Any more questions, Melissa?
Yeah, we do have another one. I think this would be our last one. Matt actually asked us how the trade-off between cost and ratio of off-grid or generator. He says 40 kilowatts is a lot of battery, a lot of money, probably can get through winter, etc., but way more than needed in the summer. It's a hard trade-off to hit, I think, without deep analysis, maybe outside this webinar scope.
Yeah, so if I understand the question right, is, let's just do a generator. That was the way we did it. One of our generators, if you look at some of the fuel consumption, it uses about two gallons of propane an hour when running. And the average price of propane right now is $2.50 a gallon. It's a little less. It's a lot more where I live here in California. So what is that? $5 an hour it costs you to run a generator. Let's just say you run the generator for 10 hours, maybe 5 hours in the morning, 5 hours in the afternoon. That's $50 a day you're spending on propane. That can add up quickly. Yeah, acknowledge that 20 or 40 kilowatt hours of batteries could be tens of thousands of dollars installed. But when we look at the maintenance, right, that you have to change the oil in the generator, the delivery, you got to truck it up the mountainside. It soon becomes pretty quick the idea that using these energy storage systems can, in the long run, save you money. Although I would say generators and a battery, maybe without solar, can offer that hybrid car approach where we still need a generator, we charge it up, charge up the batteries, and then shut the generator off. We run the generator for 2 hours, which would be $10, and then we shut the generator off for maybe a couple days. Rodolfo, I don't know if I addressed that answer completely. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you got it. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the incentives are going away for next year, so that is not helping our industry. But yeah, I mean, one way is just to consider a smaller battery bank and just combine it with a generator. Yeah, I mean, batteries are not cheap, and when you have a complete system, battery is always going to be the most expensive part of your system. So you can be a little bit conservative, use a smaller battery bank for backup and run essentials, and then use the generator when needed to supplement your needs.
Daniel, that was our last question. I don't know if you wanted to add something.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions. Thank you, Melissa, for hosting us today. Rodolfo and myself, emails are up on the screen. There's our phone number. Call us, let us know. I know, A1 SolarStore has a great team as well. Both of us as teams are here to support you as installers, not just on the initial sizing, but on the sale, on the support, and then ultimately any training you might need as well. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Melissa, for having us today.
Yeah, this has been an incredibly informative session. I know that there was a lot of information. Daniel, Rodolfo, thank you for sharing your expertise and helping bring clarity to what can often be, a complex topic. I want to remind everyone that today's recording and resource links will be shared after the webinar. And to our attendees, thank you for joining us. If you have further questions or need support with off-grid system design, feel free to reach out to us at a1solarstore.com. We hope to see you in your next webinar. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.